Okay, we're on, Chris, and now you're gonna wreck everything. I'm just kidding.
Kombucha.
I had a moment of Kramer there. I felt like Kramer from
Why?
Seinfeld for all of you. I don't know, just the way that you're gonna wreck it, Chris. You know how he gets like all crazy?
Yeah. Yep.
So this episode is brought to you by
Kombucha.
kombucha, the spiced apple flavor because it tastes all right. Chris,
And where's the look? So you had zero satisfaction on the tail end of that taste. Do one more time. Take two. Click. Kombucha.
better, better.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I was talking to Michael Leonard this week at the Learning and Innovation Committee meeting I was at. And again, it's hilarious that Michael's like, yeah, I already know that. Like we're talking, he's like, yeah, I know that. Remember that? And what about this? I'm like, you're freaking me out. He's like, it's the podcast, man. So it's funny. So the next time I see Michael Leonard, hopefully he'll have a nice, tasty kombucha for me because he knows I like them.
I didn't know that you like that. I'm learning new stuff.
You know what? My wife bought it because it's good for us. So she bought some.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it tastes horrible. Like there are some flavors by this company that we get that's just horrible. But
So it's like a variety pack that you picked.
Yes, it's a variety pack. Costco, man, where you can buy anything. You can buy 100 of anything for $10. But the problem is you end up with a bunch of stuff you might not like.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we had a great on-ramp. You're gonna love this. We went to hit broadcast and the broadcast button was gone. So it's almost like Google's playing tricks on us saying, no, you're not broadcasting today. Like literally, when I'm looking at the screen right now, at the bottom it says stop broadcast in red. So when we want to stop, I just hit it. There was no start broadcast in green. It was just like, no, you two are not talking live today. It's not going to happen. So I'm glad that we fixed that. But you know how we talked about the rant about Twitter last week, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
There was an awesome tweet yesterday. Danica Tipping, who's an English teacher in Ontario, tweeted 17 hours ago, unpopular opinion, ? You can't call yourself a thought leader in education if you haven't been a teacher in 10 years. Also, maybe don't call yourself a thought leader like ever. So I wrote back because that, you know what that did to me. I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. Yeah. I said, I wonder how the thought leader would define teacher. I'm hoping one of them will answer my question.
Dude, that's a good question.
Thanks. Then Tina Zita jumped in. Tina jumped in 25 minutes ago saying, I'm not a thought leader, so I can't speak to that. And then she's got one of those emojis with the laughing and crying really hard. Yeah. Although I've been coaching for 9 years, and it's a unique situation because I get to hang out with kids in class most of the week. If someone asks, I say I'm a teacher because that is what I do, whether kids are 5 or 55. So then Danica responds, and this is it. This made my morning. This is what Danica said that I think people want to say that aren't saying it, or at least let's just keep it to me. This is my thinking, and this is what she says. I think if you're still in the classroom on a regular basis, you stay relevant and grounded. It's the people that write books and then go on speaking tours for years and then criticize teachers for not being innovative and creative every single day that I'm fed up with. Mind blown. So my response is this. This is it. You just said it. Thank you. And I don't mean to beat this horse, but that's exactly the issue. Once you leave, I believe you have a shelf life where you can relevantly like talk about your experiences with the kids and the things you may have done and why they're important and why you think people should be moving in that direction. I get that. But after a number of years, if you're not in the class anymore, then where are you getting this information from? And do you understand that you may lose some credibility with people because you're not doing the work anymore? So how can you be writing about it? It's different than academia. It's different when somebody tries to tell me, we've talked about this on the podcast, when an expert tells me how to do something in my classroom, they've never been in the classroom, it's hard to swallow depending on like how I'm feeling and what's going on with my kids. It's hard to swallow.
Is it? And you know, it's I think yeah, I'm looking at the post now. I think I noticed it. I feel like I've seen this tweet. You know, props to Danica, but I feel like I've seen a tweet like this before. Like it's the actual post has taken on a little bit of a life of its own, where I think I'll assume primarily individuals that are social media accelerated find this type of a conversation tantalizing. Like it really kind of whets people's chops to jump in and say something. And it's not that I'm suggesting that this has been hashed out enough. I'm always curious about the sparking point that sort of rejuvenate. You know, I was thinking the other day about. Sorry, I got to go sidebar. And you didn't take. I got to talk about Brian still. We did that on the on ramp. You were supposed to remind me about Brian, my kid's teacher. So I'll bring that back in. I'm always. I remember one of the things that kind of freaked me out about. What freaked me out about Twitter when I first started using it was people going in and finding old content that I had posted on Twitter and commenting on it suddenly. So someone who discovers, you know, your posts and then they start up, they restring it. All of a sudden it comes back up as a conversation. And I had a moment where I actually went through a process of deciding whether or not I wanted that to happen. And that was part of, as far as Twitter goes, that was part of my process of leaving Twitter when I did that little mini project, that holiday, was that I wanted to kind of wipe the slate clean, and not only in my approach, but also remove my content. And I went through a process of slowly, there's an app, an online web app that will get rid of X number of posts. And I was using that slowly to sort of erase another 100. And I was doing, then finally, when I just shut down my account, everything was gone. Not that it's good or bad. I just observed that some of my posts, though I posted them intentionally, they were conversations that I was prepared to leave behind. I wanted it to become part of the backstory and not bring it back into current thinking again. This particular post gets rejuvenated every once in a while, and it's a current topic, but I'm curious as to what makes somebody rejuvenate this. Like, what is the context? What is the context that sort of makes somebody think, you know, about the thought leaders? And sometimes you get that story. Other times it's too personal or private. It's a thought. I'm going to use Twitter to kind of share my thoughts out, and we're going to see what sort of conversation comes out of it. My challenge with this is I feel like there's more to the story of this, but it hasn't moved forward. I feel like we've been circling this conversation around, you know, X number of years equals X number of years out of a classroom, and then you have to sort of give up your teacher card. I feel like some of the things that pop out of this, like I still don't understand. I don't understand the, I guess the emotional reaction to a thought, not emotional reaction. You mentioned it, you know, it's hard to swallow when, let's say, someone that's not in your classroom offers advice on what's going on in your classroom. I don't have a launch point for that type of reaction, though I get it. For someone needs to be in your doorway to be a part of your class, they need to be in the activity to be able to provide feedback on the class. I just don't have a context that would spark me up, let's say, to sort of post something that's quite specific. I mean, a number is named, right? Am I right on that? There was like 10 years. What I don't know what 10 years. I don't know. And it could be arbitrary. It could just be saying, you know, when you, this is a swath of time. But I would be.
I need to say I'm not opposed to advice. Like, I'm not opposed to, like, my principal or vice principal can sit down with me and talk me through something, and they're not in the classroom, but they're with kids. They see the kids, they're interacting, they're in the environment. So then if I write a book, if I leave teaching and I write a book, but once a week I go into a school and I just walk around the building and sit in on classes and try to do stuff with kids, would that count? I think it might. I don't know. It's a tricky thing for different people. I just feel like if you're talking to teachers, dude, it's tough. Like, in a way, it seems so easy to just be able to draw the line, but in a way, it's not so easy. I guess you're kind of referring to that in what you're saying. What's the timeline? How does it work?
Well, I think too, the string goes on to talk about, like, and this is where we were talking the on-ramp about how when conversations get multi-stringed, to jump and find all the different space, it becomes like the pineapple chart. Some of these Twitter chats are like pineapple chart. What theme do you want to chase that kind of erupts out of the original post? And you really have to almost stay strident in following one path all the way through, because it can be quite confusing. So one of the new strings that was associated with this, which I don't know if it's going to help or hinder the original post, is then going on to talk about principles. As principles in the classroom. There's a mention there about principals coming in and being in the class. And I don't know, is that what the original provocation was about? Was it about principals in the school? What makes that interesting about that to me is that if we're gonna talk about someone that's not directly in your classroom, then who else could ever provide you any feedback? And this is where I start to get into this space of where it gets really gray, right? And I'm not disputing. I've had parents quite pointedly in an email or on the phone call, Clough, you should be doing more of this. And I kind of, and right away, I have a hard time absorbing what the actual request is, because what I'm actually hearing is you're not doing your job right, as opposed to just listening to what the request is and thinking, oh, could I? I probably could. And it's not about maybe not even sort of like having to add something new in. It could just be adjusting the way I'm currently doing something, and all of a sudden I've satisfied the request. But here's where I find getting to the heart of this post is, if we're suggesting that the only people that can provide effective feedback to us are the people in the room, I think that becomes incredibly difficult. Now I'm going on an extreme here, but I'm just suggesting that this might be the rabbit hole that comes out of this conversation around thought leaders, because if no one has the opportunity other than the actual individuals in the classroom, that's a pretty, I don't know, that's an over fermented kombucha.
Okay, fair enough. But let's go back to the tweet.
Okay. I got to call it up. I got to see it.
Do you want me to send it your way?
No, I think I have it. I'm just going to flip screens. If I go to glassy eyed, it's because I'm not staring at your luscious beard on my screen. I'm actually reading the tweet. See, I'm just like,
okay. It's the people that write books and go on speaking tours for years and then criticize teachers for not being innovative and creative every single day. So, okay, that's clear to me. You write a book, you get up and you just go on tour and you're gone forever. But every day it's the same message. Teachers are not being innovative enough. Teachers are not being creative enough every day. Now, I sense that, she's exaggerating. I'm going to throw that out there. But I get what she's saying. Every classroom teacher knows there's a lot going on all the time in that room. It's not just curriculum and curriculum delivery. There's so many layers, layer upon layer. There's relationship. There's the things that take up time that nobody ever considers. Like dealing with difficult situations and students who are having troubles outside of school and anything, or even teachers who may be suffering outside of school. there's lots of layers. And I think those are put aside. Now, when I talk about those layers, there will always be people who will say, yeah, they're there. So what's your point? The layers are there. They're not going away. Yeah, I get that. But there needs to be a middle ground. That's what would make me happier, is if we just acknowledge that middle ground. That, yeah, there's two extremes. There's one extreme. There's people rah, hey, out there telling everybody how it should be done, what's going to lead to success. And then there's the people that are like, well, I'm not doing anything that person says. I get it. Well, look at what you and I do. We find really good stuff that we bring back to our work from people outside of education. So some people would say, why would you dare go into the business world with a business model and grab whatever and then bring it back to your classroom, right? Or some people might say, what are you going to get from a motivational speaker about health and wellness that you can use in your classroom? It's ridiculous. They're not teachers. They don't understand. Well, what I'm doing there is I'm trying to be innovative, right? I'm trying to change something that's happening in my classroom with some tweaks here and there to make it better, make it run better, make it better for everybody involved, whatever the case is. I personally will go out and I will look around and shop around and then find something that might excite me. And so with these thought leaders that are out there doing their thing, I don't 100% dismiss them. They might have something, they may say something that will activate something in me that will allow me to become better, that will allow me to help my students with something, but not because they said it's going to help students, because it resonated with me on some level based on my prior experience or my interests or whatever the case. Like, I'll give you a great example. On Tuesday, when I was at the Innovation and Learning Committee meeting, it was held at Communitech in Kitchener. And part of the Communitech building, D2L's in the building. So we got a tour of D2L, or Brightspace, as some people call it, or that it's called, but we call it D2L in my board. So it was really awesome because one of the people that was there with us, they leaned over and they said to me, what good is any of this? And I was surprised because they're a pretty innovative person and they're pretty open about just letting whatever experience come their way and then taking it and doing something with it in the education system. And I looked at this person, I said, what do you mean? And they were like, what are we getting from this? Like, we're getting a tour of the building, big deal. I said, no, stop for a second. If you just stop and look around, I told the person, this is what I'm seeing. The people here, part of the culture of this environment is to write on the walls. There's whiteboards everywhere. And it's one of those things where, you're down the hall, you're not near your desk area or whatever area you work in, you grab a marker, you just start writing on the wall because an idea's come to you or you want to kind of work something through and you need to get it up on the board. I said, I can easily take that back to my classroom. I can find a way to have materials around the room where kids could write on a desk or a wall if they feel like in that moment, in that space, they want to deal with something. I said, that's a really good one, actually. I feel like then there's much more. And then I went into, I'm not going to get into it here, but I went into, why I think that might be beneficial to my students in my classroom. And then, it continued a little bit and we found a middle ground because I found that at that point, this individual wanted to continue with their train of thought. And I wanted to continue with mine. I'm like, we're not going to agree, but I mean, it's kind of cool to see different learning environments, different work environments. And maybe there's something here that when I go back to my class will work with my kids. Maybe there's a lot that won't work with my kids. Like, I think you and I talked about this last year in season 1 of the Decoded podcast about using different spaces in the school to do learning. Mm-hmm. And I played with that, and my class was able to handle a little bit of that. And there were some parts of that they couldn't handle, that they didn't have the foundation, the capacity to work with it. And to be quite honest, at that point in time, I didn't have the capacity to go down that road and really invest my time. So it was one of those, like, I did what would work, and then I tried not to go outside of that box because I didn't want to put the time into it. But having said all that, if you want to be, here's the thing, here's the rub. If you're a thought leader and you've rubbed me the wrong way, then chances are I'm not going to pay attention to anything you say after that. And so therefore I'm not going to gain anything from you because I know, or my thoughts about you are not worthy of my time, kind of thing, and I'm just moving on. So I get what you're saying, but I also get what she's saying. I get what she's saying because there are people on Twitter who are pushing out their brand pretty hard, and there are people that are just soaking it up and not, it doesn't appear as though they're thinking about it, but maybe they are. I don't know, who am I to judge? But I can tell you that as a person who roams the digital earth to find cool ideas or cool thought processes that can help me in my work, I'm all about that.
So did you just come a hair's width away from saying looking for thought leaders? Because I go looking for them. I'll say it. Like, this is the counter spin. This is like the undercurrent. I go looking for individuals, whether I would say, hey, nice thought leadership, dude. But I find there's absolutely zero. I find there's nothing wrong with the term whatsoever. I have no issue with the term. This is why I kind of go back to the emotionality. And how do we, sorry, three things. And I want to put it back to you. First, did you almost say thought leader? Second, I will admit I go looking for thought leaders. And whether or not I label them as thought leaders, they're individuals that spark up my brain in a way that's I haven't been thinking. And I consider dissonance as a personal reaction to me not understanding what's going on. Not that what the person has said is wrong, but that I don't get it. So then I take a step further to kind of investigate a little bit. And finally, what I'm thinking about here in this conversation is there's a whole lot of leadership tools that you can get trained in. It's not just leadership tools, but let's say conversational communication tools that you can get trained in that help get your point across and to observe what's happening across the table from you, whoever that might be. Something, an idea, a person, a conversation that is not seated in you, but you need to stay in there and take in the information somehow. I've got in my head now, I'm wondering how well, wrong start. You mentioned about going out and looking at things that don't, and I've said this as well. I know you've said this as well. There's so much that I try and bring into the classroom that I say, hands down, never started in a classroom. I'm still piqued by it, just like the Patient Zero post from this week, noticing something cool and new that's in my classroom or in my school. I draw that into my thinking as well, into how my planning, my designing, my conversations. But I also effectively go out seeking individuals that have zero to do with school, apart from the fact that maybe they went to school at some point, but they're speaking about topics and speaking about themes that I think to myself, there's a thought leader. There's someone that's kind of like, they're a leader because they don't even realize that they're speaking about school right now. That's the dissonance. And in some occasions, I've actually had the privilege of talking to these individuals that aren't specifically doing and designing things for schools. And I say to them, would you be comfortable with me adding to your list of identifiers as educator? And there's a really cool pause there. And I think maybe that's the space of humility that we're talking about. Sometimes being in the classroom, we don't necessarily have the tools to receive what isn't specifically in our classroom as feedback. This could be the person down the hall. And I've never yet, receiving critical conversations with humility. Is that an AQ? We might couch that under wellness. And are you doing your sort of best to develop your mindful state? But I think there's a really deep toolkit there to be able to receive critical conversations in a way where you're able to extract the salient points and better yourself. And I think this is why, you know, I don't get triggered when someone tells me how to do my job, or I perceive that they're telling me how to do my job. Because I whether or not it's brought to me in the moment, I actually I find often I go seeking individuals that I can read a post about making bread, and I'm like, oh, I know how I can sort of take that little moment in making bread and actually talk about learning strategies better. That kind of divergent thinking. I don't have a clean end to this one. Were you going to say thought leader?
I don't think I was going to say thought leader.
You got damn close. You got real close. You kept on saying the word thought. And I'm like, he's looking for thought leaders. My observation only.
This doesn't have to end clean either.
I know that.
Clean at all.
I know.
It's the rub, man. For me, it's the feeling I get. It's the feeling I get, how I'm being spoken to, why I'm being spoken to. It's weird because I can go right from being wide open, tell me, what are your ideas, what are your thoughts, to go away. I don't know if other people are like that. I can go from just 1 to 0, like 1 to 100 like that. I just don't know. It depends. And there are times where, I'll say to my wife, hey, check this out. And I'll show her my phone, and it'll be like a 30-second blurb from a thought leader outside of education. I just threw that in there. And she'd be like, that guy's a moron. Why would you listen to him? That's ridiculous what that person just said. And to me, it resonates on a number of different levels. And to my wife, she's like, what are you talking about? Why would you even listen to that? Anyway, I think it's all about, there's a lot of layers. And I think that's my cop-out answer. There's a lot of layers. And it just depends. But maybe it's also, I don't know. It's a tough one. And I appreciate us going back and forth on it, because you've got me thinking about a lot of things. Can I give you an example? Can I give you an example of a situation that's never rubbed me the right way? At school, when there's a situation where you have students in your classroom who are really struggling, you might end up having what's called a team meeting regarding that student. And what happens at the team meeting is the classroom teacher's there, but the classroom teacher isn't really the pivotal point of the meeting, or at least it's never been in my experience. It's always been the experts around the table have so much to say, and the classroom teacher I've just sat there and listened, because I've been like, did that person just say that? Does that person know what I have to deal with every day? And now they're giving me like 10 new things to try in my classroom when report cards are due and I'm in the middle of like math evaluations. Like, I sit at a table. Well, here, let me break it down for you a little bit more. They tell you what time your meeting's at, because one of those, when you get all these experts in the building, they're there for the day or for the morning, and so you got to run through a system, a schedule. So they tell you, okay, you're coming from 9:50 to 10:02. Someone's going to come to your class and relieve you, and you're going to run over here with your paperwork, and you're going to participate. Okay. So you get there, and in all the team meetings that I've been part of, nobody's introduced themselves to me. Nobody said, hi, I'm John Doe. I'm the psychologist for the school board. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm the speech and language. If I know who they are, then they feel they probably don't need to introduce. But if I don't know, I have no clue who you are or what you're telling me or why you're telling me to do what I'm supposed to do. So I sit at these things for 10 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever, and they run through stuff, and there's a lot of people writing stuff down and a lot of people questioning things. And then you leave and you feel like there's been no direction given. There's been no direction. I just left my classroom for 12 minutes. These experts said a couple of things. None of it's going to happen unless my spec ed teacher or my principal sit me down and say, okay, this is how we're moving. This is what they suggested. Give it a try. So in those types of situations, I'm very closed-minded, or at least I have been closed-minded. And I say that like in a respectful way, if I can. I mean, I sit and I listen, but on my mind at that moment in time is not what they're talking about. It's about getting back to my classroom and making sure that we're rolling along. Where I might think about it is the next time I see a spec ed teacher and say, what was that? Or what do I do with that? And that's where I'm talking to someone I respect and trust and know and have a relationship with, and I've gone through hard times with that person. Like, they've helped me through some difficult times. And so there's a connection. There's no connection with these experts who walk in and tell me. I can understand a psychologist telling me how to approach something from their perspective. I get it. That's their job. And the speech and language person and the social worker. But they're talking, and I don't think they're considering my perspective, because I consider theirs. Their job is to come in, and based on all their experience and knowledge and understanding, is to try to provide us with a route, a path that's going to help a child succeed or help a child find stability at school. But I don't think they acknowledge where we're coming from, and that upsets me, because I work very hard. I work very hard to establish connections with my kids, and nobody's trying to establish a connection with me. They just come in and try to tell you what to do for whatever reason. That rubs me the wrong way, and it always has, and I've been doing this job for a while, and I'm still waiting to walk into a team meeting where someone says, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm the social worker. Now, usually you know who the social worker is because they're around, but there are experts that I've never met before in the system. And why would I? Actually, now that I think about it, I have to throw this down. There was a psychologist, I don't know if she's still with the system, a really kind lady. And when I first met her, the same thing. I didn't really meet her. She was just in the room, and she was asking questions and writing things down. And then I remember going home and telling my wife about my meeting, and then I dropped the name, and my wife said, oh, she's your psychologist? She's great. So I was like, oh, okay, well, my wife, who I trust and respect, just told me, no, that person's okay. So reset and give them an opportunity. And then I found out that the psychologist would be in my room 2 or 3 times to observe a student and to ask me questions. And then my mindset changed. So the next time I saw her, I said, my wife, you've worked with my wife before. And she's like, oh, yeah, I've worked with your wife. And we had a little thing. And then from that point forward, every time that psychologist walked past my classroom or was in the building, I would make sure to say hello. And, how are you doing? How are things? And she'd ask about my student. So that's good. But generally speaking, if I don't know you, like at the last team meeting, I knew who the speech and language person was because my wife's worked with her. And I know we have a mutual colleague friend. But at the table, there are these people. I didn't even know who the psychologist was because there were like 4 people there. I didn't know which one was the psychologist. Nobody identified them. And there's no reason because the identification happens at the beginning of the morning. But when I'm the last dude in the room, I don't know what's going on. And everybody's writing stuff down. Big thumbs up to the people in the room who are like, okay, so what's actionable here? Who's doing this and when's it going to happen? I'm like, somebody's speaking my language. Yeah. Someone's saying, when's this going to happen? And who's doing it? We're writing it down. And then I was like, oh boy, I better make sure that in these 12 minutes, 11 and a half minutes, I better make sure I write down what I'm supposed to do if somebody says Roland's doing that. That didn't happen, though, while I was in the room. So when I left, and that's the other thing, too. The bell rings. I'm on duty. I literally get up and leave. I can't stay. Anyway, there's my rant, and none of those people are going to listen to this podcast, so I'm good. And even if they listen, let's talk about it then, because I wasn't comfortable enough to talk to you about it there, but I'm comfortable enough to talk about it here. Which here is all over the world because this is online. It's not going anywhere.
We're global, baby.
Global audience. There's something I wanted to add. Oh, Michael Leonard.
Though, right?
I got to go back to Michael Leonard.
Oh, we are. Admit it.
You know what I need?
We're global.
I need a Michael Leonard face that I can just throw over mine. So when I talk about Michael, he's just here. This is the last time I'm going to pick on Michael today, or at least try. So when we're at D2L, right? And D2L has like 4 or 5 different kitchen areas where you can eat, like staff rooms. As we're walking away from one of them, Michael brings up the topic of the staff room. Like, which staff room do you go to here? Which one makes you feel uncomfortable? Which one makes you feel welcome? How would you operate? And that was an easy one for me. I'm like, I'm going where the food is good, because I'm more about the food. So if I need to go to staff room X and I know that I don't really get along with the people in there, or I don't feel comfortable around the people in there, I'm going for the food. So if the food's going to be at X, then I'm going to go get my food and leave. But it's awesome because Michael keeps coming up, the talk about the staff room environment, the feeling of discomfort, the feeling of acceptance. Like, I know I sound like a little bit of a baby here, but the other day I walked in the staff room to write on the master calendar, and there were 3 people in the room, and I felt totally uncomfortable. Like, think about that for a second. 3 people in a building of 600 plus individuals, and I can't even go in the room? Like, what's my problem? That's what I'm thinking. What's my problem? Why am I letting certain people have certain power over my thinking? That kills me, because my thinking is important.
Can I share a parallel story?
Yes, get me off of this. And thanks, Mike. We'll see you at the next meeting.
But I'm going to feed it. I'm going to feed it maybe in what I'm about to say. When I was doing my practice teaching, and was it my first placement? I think it was my first placement, very first placement. So back 2005. I don't even remember who someone took me for a tour of the school. And it wasn't my supervising teacher, it was somebody else. And they took me for a tour of the school. And as we're walking around, like, I got to see everywhere. We went in and out of small classrooms, all the spaces, all the floors. Like, it was really gracious. It was easily, this individual spent probably an hour with me. So probably gave up their whole prep, because there was a teacher at the school that walked around. So your prep, so in high school, anybody who's not affiliated, part of the EDU crew, they're 75-minute periods. So this individual walked me around the school. And seeing on the spaces, the last space that we walked through was through the office. And it was through the main office that you would get to the mailroom, where every person in the building has a mailbox. And then you get to the back space, and there's an access to the staff room. So you actually can go through the office into there. There was another door, but we just happened to go that way. So we came in through the staff room, and there were a couple people, as you've even identified, different islands. No one was actually together. It wasn't full. It wasn't full at that point. I don't remember if it actually was lunchtime though. I don't think it was lunchtime. I think it was one of the other periods. Now, again, in high school, you can actually, as a teacher in high school, you might not actually have lunch at kind of lunchtime, depending on your teaching schedule. So if your school has 5 periods, you could teach period 1 and then teach period 2, have your prep, and then have lunch. Like, it can be asymmetrical. So anyways, we're walking through there. And as we're walking out the door, as we're leaving, the door is still open. Okay. And the individuals now, as we've cycled through and sort of looked at the resources, they had sort of a little bit of the professional library there, the health and safety board, there was the union board. So the individual walked me and said, here's all the different resources, all the different spaces. And as we're walking out, say, yeah, so what did you think of the staff room? Before I actually get the chance to say anything, they add in, and no one ever goes in there. The door is still open. There's still two or three people sitting in there having something to eat. I didn't look back. I'm like, oh, they definitely heard that. And I felt like it was like they were throwing a little shade on the staff room. This is within the first week of my teaching experience of being in a high school. Now, I came to teaching as a second career. So I didn't have my, let's say, young 20-something kind of mind receiving this information. I understood that, I understood both the comment may be real to this person telling me, but might not actually be real. I didn't soak it in as truth. But I thought that was a little bit cruel, because I wondered if the individuals that were sitting in there actually thought that they were there with a social purpose. They actually, I'm here to I'm having lunch in the staff room. That's what staff does, because we eat here and we collect here and we congregate. And just an addendum to that, which just happened yesterday. One of the educational assistants that works with our team, on the autism team at the high school that I'm at, came into my classroom and was just kind of already in motion with the conversation and saying how she's mind blown that no one ever goes to the staff room, which is just 2 doors down from our class. It's actually on our corner of the school. She's like, yeah, no one ever comes in there. She said, I sit in there and I eat my lunch alone. It's a funny thing. I would love to actually hear back from here. We put it out to our global audience. I'd love to find out about, staff rooms that are just kicking it. Like, people want to go, they want to be in there. People want to be a part of whatever's going on in that staff room, and they feel like they can be a part of whatever's going on in that staff room. That it's a hub. It's a hub. You got to go, So
you're right that you are fueling me, but I'm not.
No bait? No
bait, dude.
Can I bait you with some? Okay, I'm going to bait you with.
I want to throw down one thing.
Okay.
Yesterday, I'm in the teacher workroom. That's beside my room. The teacher workroom is in between the staff room and my classroom, literally. Like, you walk out my classroom door and you hang a right. You literally, it's not even a meter away, and you hang a right and you're in. If you come out of the teacher workroom, you walk maybe 2 meters, and then you walk into the staff room. I'm in the teacher workroom working, and a teacher from the staff room comes into the teacher workroom and says, hey, Roland, the VP is on the phone in the staff room. She wants to talk to you. And I look at her, and then she laughs, and she said on the phone, when I said to her, Roland's not in here, she said, oh, he's probably hiding in the teacher workroom. Can you go look in there? And the staff member is telling me this with a huge smile on her face. So I said, go back into the staff room and hang up the phone on her. I'm going to call her from here. Like, I'm not leaving the teacher workroom. Sorry, SM, if she's listening, but she's not, because she's got better things to do. Now we really don't have any listeners. But anyway, so yeah, I called her back and we talked about whatever it is she wanted to talk about. But I found it interesting that she said that to another staff member, and then the other staff member was okay just saying it to me. And I think I was holding the sandwich in one hand and working the mouse in the other. Like, anyway, okay, what did you want to throw down?
So there was a conversation that was sparking up between Brian Aspinall and Stephen Hurley this week on Twitter. And it got me thinking about it. And part of it, there's a whole lot there, and anyone wants to go find it. But what kind of sparked me was wrestling with the idea of traditional education and the idea of tradition either having to be, I think one of the posts that Aspinall threw out was around, do we hang on to completely, Brian, paraphrasing, not rewriting, hope I hit it. I can't remember the exact tweet, but it was something to the effect of, do we hang on to a broken system as it is and work with the flaws, or do we get rid of the system altogether? And the broken system, I believe he had already identified as the traditional system. So there was some interesting banter back and forth between banter. It's old-timey. That's old-timey social media banter. But Hurley and Aspinall talking about, if there's value in hanging on to the traditions within education. And I tried to, it's kind of a big picture item that I didn't have enough time to drop my brain into, but I started to think about what are the traditions within education that if we had to make the choice to strip it down, totally, it's going to the chop shop. What are the pieces that I want to keep moving forward? I didn't land on anything specific, but that's what kind of mesmerized, that's what got my brain That's what kind of activated some deep thinking for me. And it was deep because I felt like I was out of my element. I couldn't get to an answer quickly, which I think sometimes that's what Twitter espouses. Get to an answer quickly, get your sort of words out fast, be the first one to post or repost, but don't stick around for the convo. You know what I mean? Like it encourages a little bit of that hair trigger response. So I'm still kind of fermenting kombucha. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still trying to figure, because I felt like I had an opinion. And when I really gave it a second thought, like, whoa, I don't know if I do. Despite the fact that in the past, and I've talked to Hurley about this, that I jump to sort of extremes when it comes to EDU. Like I'll kind of go to what I perceive to be a fringe or an edge. I'll just go there fast and I'll kind of figure it out when I get there. So in some ways, I might say that I haven't had a traditional path through teaching. But in some ways, I would say maybe it's just because I haven't met somebody else like me. And there's a whole lot of people that do what I do. So in the same way about traditional education, is it what we're focusing on and saying that's the traditional stuff we don't want? And we just haven't come across somebody else's tradition where you go, that's cool. And that really is, if that's part of what you consider to be traditional education, I dig it. I feel like our actual view of what traditional education is really kind of like boxed right now and divisive. Yeah, man.
I was going to say, I don't even know what to do with that because I was following that thread as well.
What were your thoughts? What was just kind of like clacking off as you were? I didn't see if you were responding in it or if you're just observing it like me.
I may have said something just to keep track of the thread, but it got me thinking as well. I didn't land anywhere. I just wanted to know, I wanted to see more where these two guys were going to take this conversation, because I think both of them have something of value to say.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel, dude, I don't even know where to start. Honestly, I don't know where to start.
Maybe that's what I'm going to think about this week. I'm going to sort of, there's something like, do you have to have spent a certain amount of time in EDU to sort of be able to observe? Because those are long arcs, eh? Like those are really long arcs. In, someone like Steven's retired. And I only mean that provides a view of education to some depth, right? And not only that, he's also got some breadth and width to what he's looking at. Like he's got so many different feeds that I don't know if I don't have that depth or width of kind of perspective. Almost as in whatever I would dare to identify as being a traditional element of education, I'm not seeing the whole picture. And in doing so, if I were to call it out, is it almost like I'm misrepresenting, like I'm just not repping well? Because maybe 3 of my followers think that I'm a thought leader on that. But you know what I mean? Right? I can look right back at you, but someone in my following is like, yeah, Clough, like if he's sort of talking about that this is traditional education, and then I've set in motion, maybe some false assumptions, maybe, and I don't know. And this is where I feel like I haven't stepped in deep enough. I don't have enough of that. Ankle deep, yo. I'm ankle deep. I might get to my knees before I actually get out of EDU. We'll see. Or before I transition to then my next phase.
Yeah, I was going to say, stop talking like that. Stop talking about the next phase and the transition out of EDU.
You know what, dude? I want to do something outside of EDU while you're still inside of EDU, so you call me out as a thought leader. Touche. That's what I want to be. I want to be your outside of EDU thought leader inspiration. Can I be your outside of EDU mentor?
Sure. I just won't let you know that you are.
That's right? Exactly it. That's what do we said that that was last episode. Nice tag.
That was last episode.
Mentorship from afar.
Mentorship from afar. Yeah. Okay. We have to talk about your dude, Brian.
Yes.
Yeah, go.
Just Brian. I would encourage anyone who has their children in before and after care to do as much as they can to support the creative ideas and the creative education stylings of the peeps that run that daycare. And part of that is paying attention to what they're doing, engaging in the conversations with what they're doing. When there's an activity that, you know, you see your own children just thrilled about, encourage it, and tell those individuals that they're doing a bang up job. You know, it's not, they're not a babysitter, and it's so much more than childcare. It can be so much more than childcare. And I want to say that flat out. So the dude that is one of the educators, his name's Brian, that works with my children, I will say hands down, the guy is bringing so much richness to their world, and the games that they play and the activities that they do and the maker things that they participate in and the big world thinking that he engages them in. Like, the dude's a thought leader for me, because it created dissonance. My concept of what I was doing and putting my children into childcare, I was just consumed in, this is surrogate parenting. They're co-parenting. They're going to be watching my children. He is not only watching my children, he is growing my children. The team is, I'll put it this way, the team is growing my children. And I am so happy to sort of have them playing that role, that when one of my kids say, you know what, Mr. Brian, or one of the other instructors, when they, maybe your kids have done this too, they provide a truth that they've learned from somebody away from you. And at first you can kind of get like, oh, like, I hope you're marketing me as well as you're marketing that teacher or whatever. But when they share one of those truths and they can just see in their eyes that and it's bang on, like it's a good thing they've said. It's not like some falsehood or something strange, you know, maybe talking about a place in the world or a culture that they're investigating, or a mathematical equation, or an artistic thing they've just created in shading or chiaroscuro, some sort of artistic endeavor. I really appreciate the fact that this team exists in a space of respect for my children, and they are thrilled to go to their learning space. And that's I just wanted to say about that. I'm hoping to have a conversation with him on chasing squirrels at some point. I would love to sort of just kind of dig into his thinking, because there's always something cracking off at that daycare in a really cool way.
I hear you. There have been both of my kids have gone to day before school, after school care, and there's nothing like the feeling you get when your kids want to get there or don't want to leave there because of the environment that the place is running, the way that the teachers interact with the kids. There's magic there, and sometimes there isn't, unfortunately, which really sucks because it makes everything harder. But I'm really happy to hear about your kids' space, about Brian and how he's making it real. And you know, like you said, they take care of your kids for many hours during the week, and so when you have that good connection, when you see things happening that get your children moving in the right direction, you know, any parent would agree that that's what we're looking for all the time, right? If it's okay with you, I wanted to shift back to staff room. Is that okay? Because I tweeted out a question. I said, teachers, do you eat in your staff room? If not, why? If so, why?
Did you hashtag it Decoded Podcast?
No, I hashtagged EdChat.
Dude, don't give it away.
We got a response from Christine Chin, who says, most days, yes. It's a great way to build those relationships with people and get out of our bubbles. She loves the conversations that she gets to have with people, whether it be school or non-school related. And Lisa Noble responded, yes, because at her current school, it's a safe and positive space, which is not always the case. These are her words. So I'm happy to see that some people are responding. It'd be great if people responded. I know, here's another response from Chris in Kitchener. He says, while I eat in the staff room now in order to socialize, I didn't always. When I was on a staff that was much older, the others would frequently complain about their husbands or ex-husbands. As a male, it was just uncomfortable. So you know what? Big thumbs up to these people for dropping it, because we're asking for a reason. I want to know. I know you definitely want to know what's going on. Like, are people going? Are people not going? And I think by cracking this topic open, I think it's just something to talk. This is totally decoded podcast. This is stuff people don't talk about.
Do you remember at one point we also said that we had some convo at some point is whether or not so we do as educators so much in our IRL life to make education better, whether you're putting your kids to bed and then doing marking until midnight, or you're grocery shopping for snacks for the snack shelf, or you're bringing in art supplies from home, or maybe you started yoga just so that you could be more mindful and more positive at school. And you and I were talking a little bit about, how much of what we learn at school benefits us in real life. So if we flip the script, what is it that school could be doing to make our home life better? And I think that might be a topic for another discussion. But when we look about the spaces where that potentially could happen, I would say the staff room is one of them. The staff room can be the neutral space where you could actually interact in a way that could make your non-teaching life better. I totally get what Chris is saying, though, like that sort of, hearing other people complain about their spouses or whatever. I'm not a big fan of that in the general sense where it's just being broadcasted. I feel like it makes me a little nervous to think, people just kind of broadcast in that way. But maybe for those two that were talking there, not Chris necessarily, the people that were talking, maybe they felt that was their safe space. Maybe they felt this was the only place that they could sort of connect and share that kind of stuff. Staff room, yo.
It's the staff room.
Sometimes it's the placement too. Like the staff room at our school is right off in a corner. Like, it's not like if you're teaching or your office space is at the opposite side, one floor up, I don't know if that encourages you to come downstairs. Like, even if you wanted to socialize, it always strikes me like places like that should be as centrally located as possible.
That's funny, eh? Because like sometimes I wonder about school construction. And who thinks of how these places are built. I get that they involve educators, but still something's missing. Staff rooms are not generally central based on like the old school buildings I've been in. They're on one end or the other, or like at my current school where there are 5 levels, it's on the 5th level. So if you work in the lower level, also known as the basement, like that's where I was supposed to be. That's where my class is supposed to be. I'm telling you right now, you'd never see me again. If I was in that room downstairs in the lower level, nobody would ever see me. There's a bathroom right next to the classroom I was supposed to be in. So I have a place to go if I need to use the bathroom. The library is right above me. So when my kids go to library, I just go up the stairs. There I am. And the office is a little bit above. They're not full. The levels are not full stairways up and down or whatever. Man, I'd love to. It's too bad when you came to Kitchener, we weren't able to go to my school, because I think you would have appreciated the Hogwarts feeling of it. Okay. But then the office is like right above me. So I could literally go to the office, make copies, check my mailbox, and I'm gone again. I would never go to the staff room. There'd be no reason for me to go to staff room other than to socialize. And if I'm having a hard time socializing now, and I'm right next door to it, where I see people all the time, it's done deal. I'm not going. And then I feel bad a little bit for the people down there. Now, mind you, I'll tell you, from my perspective, I do notice, because people walk past my room, I do notice a lot of people who are on different levels of the building going to the staff room. And on Thursdays are treat day. I will go in on Thursday, depending on the treat. So the other day, I forgot it was Thursday. I was doing something and I looked up, and the EA that works in my room had like a little plate of snacks on it. And then it was like, oh, it's Thursday. I said, oh, is there anything good in there? And she was like rhyming off. And I'm like, oh yeah, when I dismiss my kids, I'm going in there because, and see, that's the thing. When I went in there on Thursday morning, I didn't care who was in there. I just was like, I was kind of hungry. She had mentioned a couple of things that sounded interesting. It didn't matter to me who was in there. I just walked in and went right beeline to the food, picked out what I wanted and left. I think somebody made a comment that I was in the room, but I kind of just overheard it and just got my stuff and moved on. You know, I want to throw this down. The people, now this isn't an issue right now. This has been an issue in the past. The people who call you out on what you're eating. And I've talked, my wife and I have had conversations about this. There seems to be one on every staff. Like, you'll be eating lunch and they won't have anything to say, or it's an uncomfortable moment, so they'll just comment about the food you're eating. And sometimes it's not a very positive comment.
I like the loaded ones. Oh, is that fish that you warmed up in the microwave that I can smell in the room? And it's so strong smelling? I'm like, how do you even unpack that? There's like 7 questions being asked there here. I say it's that one's definitely tricky. The smelly lunch.
That's a choose your.
Wish I had space on my thing to draw something else. But yeah, the smelly lunch for whatever reason.
Those people, when they ask those questions, when they drop the 7 bombs,
yeah,
I call those choose your own adventure questions.
I love it. Yeah.
Because then you decide.
Bandersnatch.
Well, and it's also, and that's a make or break. That's a make or break for the human who needs to respond, because the human who's doing it, I think most people would agree that depending on how they did it, they'd be like, oh, that guy's a jerk. Like, did he just do that to that person? But the way you respond will cement your reputation for the next little bit.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I generally don't do well with those. My adventure tends to be a hardcore response that makes that person turn around and wish that they never said anything to me in the first place, unfortunately. But why? But here's the thing. Here's the why. And I've said this to some staff members in my building that I really connect with. And I've had some moments, some uncomfortable moments with other staff members. And my response is, why? I'm over here in my corner. I'm just doing my work. I'm just eating my food in the corner. I'm not seeking difficulty. I'm not seeking conflict. And yet, it appears on my doorstep with someone who's coming to tell me how something's going to happen, or someone wants something and wants it now, but doesn't understand that there's a way of, like, why? I've purposely put myself aside. I don't want difficulty. I don't want conflict. I'm not looking for it. But when you come to me and you bring it, well, like, it's going to be hard for me to take the high road, because I've purposely removed myself from the road. And here you are in your dune buggy, searching me out on the sand by the water, just to take your screwdriver and poke me. Why? So unfortunately, and I don't think I've ever like even texted you about this. Unfortunately, there's a couple people on staff where I think it's clear we don't need to communicate with each other, so we just won't. But I feel like it was brought on. I don't feel like I went out looking for it. I feel like it came to me and I put it to rest. And now it's caused a discomfort and a situation of conflict. And I hate that. I hate that on a number of different levels. Level number 1, that I do believe, like, I don't walk around the earth wanting to be mean to people. I just don't. I just want to get along, like many people do. I just want to get along. Even if you don't like me, and I know you don't like me, and we're civil, awesome. But yeah, dude, I don't like that. And I try not to do that to people. I probably have. I'm not going to say I haven't. I probably have. But in my situation right now, where I'm at, what I'm doing, I'm not hiding, but I'm not going looking for trouble. I'm just eating my food where I need to eat my food, and I'm doing the work that I need to do. I don't know what else to say. What I'm trying to talk about, what I'm trying to express, and I am censoring myself. Let's put that out there. I am censoring myself. I'm not saying things how I would like to say them. And I wish that I didn't have to censor myself, but I do because I'm a professional, and hey, we have a global audience, right? So I have to make sure that I'm a responsible digital citizenship as a citizen as well. The bottom line is, what would happen to get me talking probably would have to be a Decoded podcast after dark.
Yeah, there we go.
And then all of a sudden,
or a 12-hour filibuster where we really do lose track of what, who we are, our own sensibilities. It's like, okay, we're officially in our what have we talked? And I don't even have enough sketchnote art paper to be able to track that stuff. So
I know we have to go, but there is one thing that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
You hit me up on Twitter the other day with one of the TED Talk podcasts that you listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And your connection to me was around empathy and using technology to assist with empathy and assist with like human connection and understanding.
Take the people back though, because
take the people back. Maybe you need to drop that.
Well, all it was I think we had a conversation. We had several conversations about wearable tech. And then you had posted out about, I think it was a local company. Yeah, local company that was kind of
North.
Yeah, they're reapproaching it. They're reapproaching wearable tech as far as smart glasses go. And then you and I had some chatter around, the cost. And I think you try to, I think you even dropped a note to them. I'd be happy to test drive these, like all the kind of good stuff. Did you say that? I thought you had you'd be happy to.
I didn't drop them a note, but I would be happy to test drive. I mean, I'd be happy to actually purchase it.
Yeah, it's a little prohibitive still, the cost. Yeah. But then you and I sort of took that one step further, and we had a conversation around the potential for building empathy and compassion by actually having this as one of your sensory tools. So, and I think we both left with, positive feels out that, like understanding, that's the angle that some of this wearable tech I think needs to take as an extension of humanity and not a tool just for gathering information. Because I think a lot of the 1.0 of this, if we sort of touch back on the Google Glass, there was a high emphasis on sort of prestige, early adopter, and that you had access to unlimited information. So I'd like to spin where you and I went, say, well, you kind of prompted this, that idea of by having, sure, you get information, but you could be receiving information in a way that might be more useful to you in building empathetic connections, understanding your environment, seeing the field for what it was. So this past week, I often, I listen to a lot of podcasts on my commute. Anybody wants to check the list, I drop it on Twitter under Commuter Classroom. So I try and put those there, the ones that catch my attention. And one called, I think it was Transformation. I think that's the theme. I think it was called Transformation. That's the overall theme of it. It's a TED Ed Radio. So is this the one? This is the one that you're talking about, right? I hope. So
it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. I think that's the
preamble. It's the one about like technology and becoming a cyborg and using. And so I listened to the first one, and because I think there's like 3 or 4 that are come together. The first one, I think the man's his first name is Neil. I can't remember the last name, Harbajin, something like that. If you look up, if you Google the man who uses technology to listen to colors, he listens to your color. I listened to that episode and I was blown away. The first thing I did was I found him on Twitter and started following him, because the second thing was I wish that I was still doing Roland Chidiac Connects, because I would reach out to him and want to talk to him so badly. Because as you know, and I've said this to other people before, there is something attractive to me about using technology to harness my world and to improve it. From wearing an exoskeleton so that I could run more efficiently, to wearing glasses that would provide me with very quick and maybe not so accurate information about another individual and how they may be feeling at a moment in time. These things are attractive to me. I want to engage in stuff like this. So when this man says that he's a cyborg, he's attached something to himself a piece of technology that helps him see the world and hear the world in a different way. Listening to him talk was so fascinating to me. And hearing how he lives life and how he sees and hears life was so fascinating to me. It was just refreshing. Well, but for that day, for the rest of yesterday, I was very, very aware of my surroundings and very appreciative of the fact that I can see and I can hear and I can speak unfettered, right? Because I have no disability in that regard, if you could call it that. But I was I felt very blessed. So when I went to school, it's funny because the students were saying to me, they were saying, "Why are you looking at me like that?" And I said, "You know what? I've never noticed your hair, like the way it's cut. I've never noticed that." And they're looking at me like, "You're nuts, Mr. C." And I'm like, "No." And I didn't go into detail, but I was really looking at them. I was really like appreciating them. And when they would talk, a couple of times I closed my eyes and just listened to them talk. And that threw one or two of them off because I was doing balanced literacy assessments. And so they're reading, but my eyes are closed. And I was just listening to them read. It was just, I felt blessed that you had dropped it in my lap and that I could appreciate that I can go out into the world every day and I can see and hear and speak and feel unfettered. There's nothing stopping me. But I would love the option to augment that with a piece of technology that can make me better, or at least give me more information, because, you know, I could walk into a room with my smart glasses on and see that my wife is extremely upset and still push her buttons, you know, instead of moving away or stopping myself. Anyway, so thanks for dropping that. I'm going to listen to it again.
I posted it. So
okay.
I just dropped it onto Twitter. I tagged you in it. I put it under hashtag Decoded Podcast. I think we've landed here a couple times, but I would say for me, perfect example of a thought leader. Perfect example, because I thought that you and I had come to came to a pretty cool understanding of the potential of smart glasses in the classroom. This guy just blew me out of the water. I'm like, this is so beyond. And for him, it's completely normalized. Again, his traditional view of looking at the world is not my traditional view of looking at the world. His traditional idea of what it means to be a human is not my traditional idea of being a human. Not necessarily. I'm not there yet. I get it. I can see the path, but I'm not there yet. And in listening to him talk about what I loved, you know, sorry, spoiler alert, put it on mute right now. When he was talking about how the way people look and how they sound, I love that. And talking about, you know, being able to look at somebody's face that is a composite of different colors and the type of orchestration that would happen in his head by looking just at your face, by tracking from your forehead to your eyebrows to your beard, and for that to be his understanding of you and the song that is your face. It's one of those, you know, podcasts often, they kind of go in one of two ways. They either, two extremes, they either become background noise to my thinking, which is dangerous, or they become everything that I'm listening to, and that becomes dangerous. Because as I drive, I can't have the third part of that focusing on the road. This one completely consumed my focus. I couldn't get enough of what he was talking about. Could not get enough. I think he's a cool thought leader because he's talking about education without even realizing it. I was making little snap connections with my ASD community classroom about communication tools all along the way. So it's a good talk. Especially, here's the other reason. I think, considering where we are, where I think we're at a bit of a TED Talk fatigue, because everyone has one that they love, their favorite one, the repost. I hadn't come across one like this before, so it was a nice refreshment as well.
And I know you post about the things that you listen to on the way to school or whatever, and generally I see it and I keep moving. Mm-hmm. But I appreciated that you were like, you tagged me and you're like, you need to check this out because it applies to what we've been talking about. And so thanks. I appreciate that. So, you know, on one layer, it was important. And dude, if you could see what it looked like in my house, I was listening to this at 7:30 a.m. Between 7:30 and 7:55 a.m., it's a gong show because I'm trying to get my kids to comb their hair, brush their teeth. I'm getting the lunches in the bags. Like there's a million things going on. So I literally took my iPod, I hit the link, I put one earphone in, put the iPad in my iPod in my back pocket, and as I was doing the circus that is from 7:30 to 7:55 a.m., I was listening. So I mean, I'm like, and I thought, Clough, when am I going to do this? But I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just layer it on top of the nonsense that happens anyway. I was able to get that. I'm so glad I listened to it. So thank you very much.
The other ones are good too, but I was happy that it was the first one because I know how busy you were. I was like, as long as, and I was actually going to put that in the message. As long as you listen to the first one, you're good. The other ones in it, the other ones in the episode are worthy as well.
I'll try to get to that today, right? Like when I do my workout or whatever, that will be the go-to to listen to first, and hopefully it doesn't knock me out. Okay, so I think are we good to end? What episode are we? 17 of season 2. Are we good to let 17. It go? I want you to say something so it brings your stuff up on the screen.
Hello, hello. So here's the actual.
Say something else.
Oh, I'm still not there. So if you can't, you got it. Does that work?
That's cool.
Yeah. So there we are. Bitter pill kombucha, traditional recipe, all unnatural flavors, triple fermented, artificially sweetened. www.thoughtleaderbevies.com. I think we covered it.
Right on. Now we just need a sponsorship.
Oh, we come up with our own product. We can make kombucha.
Oh, it sounds about right. We're already paying for this podcast on our own.
Yeah.
We'll just make a product that nobody's going to buy, and we can
let's entrepreneur something that people aren't doing. We're not going to write a book. We're not going to go on some sort of talking sort of junket. We're going to make our own kombucha. Decoded kombucha. We just call it bitter pill kombucha. There it is. I have the pitch. We'll make it. How big's your garage?
Well, I'm a car guy. Like we put our cars in the garage. Do you put your cars in the garage?
No. Well, yeah, my spouse puts hers in there. I don't. Mine just rots in the driveway.
Fair enough.
Basement, backyard, shack out back.
The shack out back. That's where the what did you call it? Bitter pill? That's where bitter pill's made. The shack out back.
I got write that down.
We need shirts now.
I don't have any space on there. The shack out back.
Okay, I'm quitting my job. We're gonna write a book, and I'm gonna go on tour and tell teachers that they have to drink the bitter pill kombucha.
Yeah, it almost works. Don't get me. You got me frightened and excited at the same time.
The shack out back can be the makerspace, so we can we can hit makerspace people, and with the bitter pill, we can hit like admin. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I love it. Okay.
Okay. See you, bud.
Take care, man.